It's pouring with rain, the sky is grey in all directions, and I finally decided to do my review of The Passenger and Stella Maris. I was able to find The Passenger very easily second-hand, as a nice cover, which is complementary to Stella Maris. I believe that the previous reader only got halfway because the book started making kind of creaking and popping sounds as if it had never been opened fully on those later pages. First, the spoiler-free section. If you're a fan of Cormac McCarthy, you will enjoy both of these books. If you just want to read a sort of weird, interesting novel, just read The Passenger. And I've seen some debate online, but there is no debate. You 100% need to read The Passenger before Stella Maris. Not because the plot won't make sense, but because you won't care about what's going on. The Passenger is a plot-driven book. This happens, this character meets this character, blah blah blah. Stella Maris is written as interview notes, which is pure dialogue. Not to say that it's not interesting, because it is very interesting, and I enjoyed it, but I really don't believe you will be interested and invested in the characters enough to get through it. I really like these book covers. I think that this is a nice design. You can see they're kind of complementary to each other, and you can see that Stella Maris is much shorter than The Passenger. Unfortunately, the dust cover on mine got slightly battered. That's because I put it in my bag and took it with me. I think this is more of a coffee table book. To be honest, I don't care about these small bits of damage. It kind of makes it seem more real. Stella Maris relates to an asylum, whereas The Passenger relates to divers, including in rivers. So I think this is clearly a flooded plain, but I think this is appropriate. I like this is almost a flooded building, or perhaps that's just reflecting off the lino. No, I think it is flooded on reflection. But I like both of these. I think they fit the interior of the book very well. First of all, The Passenger. Cormac tricks us by thinking we're going to get a plot-driven story. Now, a lot of things happen, as I said, and the things that happen are interesting. But we don't get the kind of satisfying conclusions and political sort of crime thriller story that you would get from a more typical author. I did enjoy it, and this is a spoiler alert. The mystery goes unresolved, but I didn't find it any less satisfying. The real exploration is the internal world of Bobby. Stella Maris, on the other hand, is an exploration of the internal world of his sister, Alicia. And another spoiler alert, they have an incestuous relationship. McCarthy is unique in that he kind of makes you root for this incestuous relationship to happen, even though it can't happen. And her schizophrenia is kind of being triggered by that, in my view. So this lady, Alicia, who's the subject of Stella Maris, she is a schizophrenic, and she's also a brilliant mathematician, amongst other things. Now, her delusions are meaningful, and she knows, in a way, that they're meaningful. She does try and get rid of them, she hates them, but deep down it's clear that she knows there's something going on. And I believe that she, throughout the story of her life, is trying to deny that reality because of the terrifying implications it might make. You know, what beasts lurk in our subconscious? You watching this now, is the you that you identify as you really the one in the driver's seat, or is the you that is identified as you more just a passenger along for the ride? Normally I cut out pieces of paper or train tickets, used train tickets, to make bookmarks. In this case I've used bits of paper towel because I was lazy and reading this at the dead of night. On page 44, Alicia and the therapist start talking about particle physics. Now, that's not my strongest subject, but I do know something about it. their description of a gluon is pretty accurate. However, she goes on to say a positron is made of 2 up quarks and a down quark. A neutron is made of 2 down quarks and an up quark. So that's true, right? However, he doesn't mean a positron, he means a proton. And that's a very elementary particle physics mistake. So a positron is the counterpart to an electron. You know that electrons are these negative little balls that live inside electrical wires and make up electrical circuits. Positrons are the antimatter equivalent. They have a positive charge and the same mass as an electron. I've heard that Cormac McCarthy was very connected to various physicists, and I'm extremely surprised that he would have such an elementary mistake in the book. It may have been a mistake in transcription, but I'm really surprised that this mistake lives on to this day. That being said, it really doesn't matter. Most people reading this book probably wouldn't catch that, and I don't think that the people who do read this book are going to go on to attempt to educate people about particle physics, so it probably doesn't matter. From page 79, yes, I suppose that sometimes the unconscious will keep working on certain dreams, revising them, hoping you'll get it. That's not the interesting part, though. What's the interesting part? The interesting part is that it knows that you haven't gotten it. It doesn't really have anything to go on. It's a mind reader. Sometimes it will just keep trying the same story over and over. It's stuck. It has no place to go. The recurring dream I've had is also pretty unusual, unheard of really, in that the dreamer is not in it. Are you in every dream you have? Yes. You think people don't have dreams they're not in? People are interested in other people, but your unconscious is not, or only as they might directly affect you. It's been hired to do a very specific job. It never sleeps. It's more faithful than God. Alicia has a certain view of the unconscious. She really knows about this idea of messages and your dreams telling you things, and yet she ignores the message. She tries to dismiss her delusions, even though she rationally knows, perhaps because of her high intelligence, that the delusions are not simple fantasies or sort of random signals. They must have a purpose and a message, and yet she seems to go out of her way to logically dance in circles and ignore that message. Perhaps because she has a hidden suspicion of the outcome of such inquiries, and she thinks that she might not like that outcome to be the case. It's a bit like someone with cancer symptoms never going for a checkup because they might not like the answer. Continuing with my contention that her dreams are not beyond understanding, I'm reading from page 127. She's describing what these kind of strange acts would be. So she has one primary delusional figure called the Kid, the Thalidomide Kid, who is a kind of orchestrator of acts, like a circus ringmaster, perhaps, or the man with the gavel in a musical act. Nothing much. He'd wind up spouting some sort of gibberish. It would be nice to think that there was actual data encoded in these spiels, but I've been listening to them for years and Turing couldn't untangle them. We did actually have a minstrel show early on, when I was 12. They announced it as a minstrel show, in honour of it. All of it wretched beyond telling. Most of the time I'd just curl up in bed and work on math problems. Sometimes I'd look up and everyone would be gone except him, still pacing. I told him once that he was wasting his time, that I would be a warrior. Not a being of the spirit, but of the flesh. I was a born classicist, and my heroes were never saints but killers. He would look quite serious, and then hold forth with a diatribe concerning the long-held strongholds of Rugmold. I looked at what Rugmold was, and it's exactly what you would think. It's mold that lives on your rug. And my interpretation of this, well, first of all, let's talk about the menstrual show. At 12 years old, she's going to be thinking about those issues more, and those issues of having an adult menstruating body. So it makes sense that she would be concerned about that. And having this kind of minstrel show be transmogrified into a menstrual show is a very clear expression, perhaps, of her concerns and trepidation of that time. And because it was an ugly show, perhaps she was finding it and its consequences ugly. And perhaps on more than a physical level, she found it disgusting because of the nature of the consequences of incest. I mean, let's look at the kid. She calls him the thalidomide kid, although as far as I'm aware, he never identifies himself as such. I believe he's not a kid, he's her kid, her hypothetical child, the product of incest, of the genetic issues that might arise, which are similar to the symptoms of thalidomide in that he has birth defects, essentially. What if the overall purpose of the acts of the kid is to be a pointless distraction, to be meaningless? What do I mean by that? Well, she describes mathematical problem solving as a subconscious process. You think about the problem, you can't solve it, you lie down, distract yourself, go to sleep, then somehow your subconscious or unconscious mind has been working on the problem, and then when you revive into consciousness, it has the answer for you. You don't know how that's been reached. I contend that these delusions serve as a distraction for her conscious mind, so her unconscious mind can go to work. They're supposed to be nauseating and nonsensical, and in that distracting capability, they manage to allow her to solve these problems. Even in the example I just read, that's what happens. She sees the bizarre and annoying act, she tries to ignore it and solve some problems, and then when she looks up, they're gone, and only the kid remains. On page 184, she describes an early physicist who should have discovered the anti-electron, which is called the positron, as we know. And she's saying that, basically, he definitely knew that such a thing would exist, but he didn't dare say it in case he might be wrong. And this relates to her great unconscious fear of being this genius who knows everything, but also making mistakes and being wrong. How do you reconcile the two? And that is further related on page 185 to a mathematician who gives up mathematics, which is also what she did. And there's kind of a problem in all of science in that you're building on shaky foundations, and if you actually perform this intellectual exploration, and you can do this in philosophy, science, mathematics, you find that you reach some axioms that themselves don't stand on anything. They're just assumed to be true, and all else comes from them. How do we find grounding for those initial axioms, the start of our reasoning? That is a terrifying thought. It should inspire terror in you. Now, as an engineer, I have an easy out over a mathematician, in that I can build pulleys and levers. We can point to a myriad of electronic, mechanical, etc., devices that work, and that is grounding enough for the theories. Them being true in an absolute sense honestly doesn't interest me. Merely that they have utility. I hope I've sufficiently whetted your appetite about Stella Maris. However, if you haven't read The Passenger, you need to put this down and pick this up. Now, The Stella Maris was more expensive, secondhand. I imagine not many of them sold because it's genuinely a slog to read this dialogue. I didn't find it that bad, but I know many people will. It's also, there's a kind of Laura Palmer effect. Laura Palmer was the murdered girl in Twin Peaks, in that when you're reading The Passenger, you kind of grow to know and love Laura Palmer without meeting her. And in Stella Maris, you know what the end is going to be, which is rather tragic. We are, in that sense, experiencing the same tragedy as Bobby in The Passenger. Bobby is living with the shadow of his sister, this girl who died, this girl who he loved, and love in what sense, we're not sure, but her death is a continuing weight on him. He finds it pretty monstrous, pretty horrifying, and partway through the book, and this is a spoiler, please put this video down and pick up the book if you're so inclined. Someone advises him to get committed. Why is that? Well, the government's pursuing him for tax evasion. He didn't do it, he didn't evade taxes. However, that's not good enough, and he spent money, and the government prosecuted him, and then they persecuted him, and they took away his car and his bank account, etc., etc. And one solution would be to go, okay, I'm nuts, because they're not going to have a good time prosecuting you in an asylum. Now, he believes that Alicia was already dead by that point, but there is some confusion in the timeline. Maybe if he'd gone to that same asylum and committed himself, he would have actually seen her, in a sense. This is a bit of a out there interpretation, but when you're reading The Passenger, she is already dead, essentially, from Bobby's perspective. And when you're reading Stella Maris, Bobby is dead from her perspective. The two of these things can't be true at the same time. Now, we may be experiencing issues with information, so it's more credible, perhaps, that Alicia just thinks Bobby's dead because she can't contact him, whereas Bobby has seen news reports or coroner's reports or attended a funeral for Alicia. But that isn't confirmed in the story. So I maintain it's a possible or valid interpretation that they're alive simultaneously and he just had to get himself committed. That's it for my review of The Passenger and Stella Maris. To summarise, I would absolutely recommend The Passenger to anyone who wants a slightly weird novel. Stella Maris is a companion piece for after you've read The Passenger. I want to thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.